be on Facebook. Matter of fact, I think we are on Facebook right now as we speak, Mikey.
You're absolutely right. Once again, your accuracy amazes me.
My
That's New York
accuracy
Vinny.
amazes myself, my friend.
New York Vinny's in Seattle, Washington. So good morning to you, Vinny, as I say every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 past 10.
And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 past 10 or thereabouts, as I like to say, because I'm never on time. Good morning to you, Michael Knight, down in Los Angeles, California. And
I want to say thank you to my sister. She sent me this hat from Italy when she went to Piemonte. It says Italia.
Italia.
And and she sent me this shirt when she went to Prague, which says Franz Kafka, Prague.
I like that. She didn't send you a
It's
shirt of
Kafka-esque.
the infant of Prague.
No, no, no. I'm in lockstep with Franz. He and I see the world exactly the same way. Franz Kafka, who begged on his deathbed that his only friend, Max Brod, destroy all his works, made him promise.
And did he?
He did not.
Yeah.
He published them for the first time in their existence and made Franz Kafka one of the sterling contributors to the Western canon of literature, writing in a vein, in a way, using themes and vocabulary and imagination that no one since William Shakespeare had been able to put together. Franz Kafka, a true torture genius.
Well, you know what that proves to you, Michael?
That it's going to hurt if you're going to be good. Oh, he's good. Does it
No,
hurt yet?
no, not even close. Even your freaking best friends will lie to you when you're dying.
Well, because it was such an uncomfortable moment. Now, Max, come here. I can't speak.
Now, if that was his wife, she probably would have argued with him.
No,
No,
she would have. She would have said, "Don't worry. I burned everything last night. It was
yeah,
in the way."
we had the kids do it. Wait a minute. We don't have any kids. Don't worry about it.
That's what you think, but I'm an existentialist. I think we probably have children we don't know about in the future.
In the future? Who was that? Was that the Talking Heads?
The
In
future?
the future? Remember that song?
Yeah, I do. I do remember that now. Coming to think of it. By the way, Joey Ramone and his family sold all his publishing holdings and all his parts of songs and all his financial stake in the Ramones to a publishing company for $10 million. Even though Joey Ramone is long gone, but
Yeah.
his family, the Hyman family, is $10 million richer, plus whatever earnings come in subsequent years.
Like I said, you're on your deathbed. Everybody's lying to you.
Whatever you do, don't sell my publishing. Hold on to the publishing.
Yeah,
Don't
we'll
you
hold
worry,
on to it till somebody
don't you
comes along with enough money.
don't you worry, Joey. We got this figured out.
We have that. Yeah, we have it. We're good to go. All right, man. Let's. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about today, don't we?
Were you surprised about K, G, and O?
Uh,
I was stunned. I was absolutely
yeah,
stunned.
yeah. When you sent, because you sent me the text yesterday, and then Lorraine, our friend Lorraine, sent me a text moments afterwards. The same thing. Although
That's
you,
Lorraine Meyer is the maven of San Francisco real estate, so she'll be leasing out the KGO studios to somebody
yes,
soon.
if you need real estate in San Francisco, she's who you need to see. Um, anyway, uh, you know, this station had been on life support for many, many, many years. Ever since Cap City's ABC pulled out and sold it to who did they? Well, and then it was Disney. And even it started to shake a little when Disney owned it, but then when Disney sold it to was it is it Cumulus, right?
Cumulus is the current owner, yeah. Well, for years, Vinny, it was an owned and operated station of the ABC radio network,
Right.
and it was a crown jewel of the ABC radio network. And it wasn't by itself. It joined four other 50,000 watt stations: WABC New York, WLS Chicago, KABC Los Angeles, KGO San Francisco. If you just owned those four stations at one time in our radio history, you would have been a very rich man or woman, and you would have had two, if not four, of the proudest stations on the dial anywhere in any market.
And you would have reached um, you would have reached probably 75% of the population of the United States, because these stations were and are still clear channel stations.
Yep.
And what that means, for those of you who may not know, give me a quick little radio history lesson, is that when they wanted to create a system when they started radio um, early on, so that as few stations as possible could cover as much ground as possible. So they allowed these stations, these four, I think there were 8 or 10 altogether. But
Yeah, I don't think KGO was on that list because it's directional north-south on the West Coast.
right, no, it was. Here's what happened. NBC actually, who originally owned it,
The red and blue.
to the Blue Network, they had WABC in New York as well, which might have had a different name at the different call letters at the time. ABC went east to west. And I guess at that point in time, bouncing off the ionosphere, you could hear ABC on the West Coast.
I've heard WOR in my bed in Kentfield, California.
So they changed the direction, because it's a directional signal, which means it points a certain way.
Right.
And they moved the KGO transmitter to go north-south. So it wouldn't interfere, because somewhere over the country, the signal's mixed up.
And if you're ever 25 miles off Mendocino, you can hear it like it's next door to you.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, you can hear. I mean, there's a number of posts on my Facebook page that actually people from up here who used to listen to guys like Ray Taliaferro at night,
Right.
and Dr. Bill Wattenberg, and Les Crane, and all of those different personalities that KGO had. KGO was the college of talk radio. It was.
In fact, Les Crane helped invent it there.
Yeah, it was. You know, that they had up until the early '60s. Actually, you know who actually brought the format was a guy who actually was the program director when they made the flip to a talk station in the early '60s. Was Jim Dunbar.
What a great personality. What a great talent.
Yeah, Jim. I worked with his son, Jim Jr., at KUSF.
If you haven't heard him do Biff Burns as on the Live Line to Sports, this is Biff Burns saying, this is Biff Burns saying, this is Live Line to Sports. Then you haven't lived, especially when he cold reads it at 5:45 a.m. and has no idea who played, what the scores were, and didn't care all that much. It was the delivery. To be Biff Burns was the idea, not the scores, not who won, but to be Biff Burns.
And Dunbar, was the PD, and he said, okay, well, he didn't say, because ABC said, okay, let's try it. I think he probably had an inkling that music radio had its time, and probably somewhere, although probably a little early, pull the trigger on it, but it was new, it was novel, and nobody ever really thought much about talk radio.
And if you were one of those big stations with a big signal and no format and no ratings, you were sitting in San Francisco with a giant flamethrower, and you couldn't beat KYA, KEWB, KSFO, KABL. Right. You couldn't beat them. You couldn't get in the game.
Yeah, you couldn't beat KDIA, which was the 1300 was the soul station.
1310, Lucky 13.
Yeah. So,
hey, mommy-o, hey, daddy-o, this is your astronaut, Roscoe, splitting the scene on the Lucky 13. They say, ooh, look at Pooh, look at you. We're all through.
Oh, man. So, you switch it to talk, right? You try something different, you try anything. I guess in some ways that's what they're doing here, is trying anything.
I think Owen Spann came over from KNBC or KNBR. He was doing a daily talk show at the Palace Hotel on Market Street. And you could hear the luncheon being served in the background, the clink of plates and the pouring of coffee. It was a great atmosphere and great sound effects. And I think he brought that to KGO.
Well, one thing that Dunbar did when he started KGO, when they moved into the talk format, is every show was on remote.
Yeah.
Every show was done at a restaurant, at some venue. They didn't, they did shows at the Hungry Eye.
And
Matter of
as you
fact, I think
should.
a lot of the Les Crane shows were done at the Hungry Eye.
You should go to the Hungry Eye. You should be broadcasting there every night.
Right. And that's what, because they were out in that, because that's how you got listeners in those days. In those days, you got listeners by walking out and meeting people and talking to people, and boom, listen, and they walk in, and it's the table set up. Probably at that time, it had a big box to get the thing back to the station, and that's how they built KGO. And as time went on, they had Owen Spann, and they had Les Crane, and they had Ira Blue.
Ira Blue came, yeah, he came from KGBS, which was like a middle of the road station in the middle of the dial. One of the things about those remotes, that was a double union station. The engineers were union, and the jocks were SAG-AFTRA.
Right.
Or in those days, AFTRA. And so when you did a remote, you paid double barrel. You paid for an engineer in the studio. You paid for an engineer on site. You paid for the jock. You paid for meal breaks. You paid for everything.
But they must have been making enough money because it all worked.
Well, in those days, it did work. It worked beautifully.
Yeah. And then as time went on, they started to add. I remember I got there in '81. And I immediately
That's their dial position, by the way. The big
yeah,
810.
yeah. I in '81. I didn't even think of that. That's and I had known, even though I was working in insurance, that I wasn't long for insurance. That I wanted to do radio. I wanted to be on the radio. But I knew that in my heart of hearts that I probably wasn't going to be a DJ. I probably wasn't going to be that typical Don Sherwood, Gene Nelson, because I don't know, I just didn't, that wasn't, but when I heard KGO, I heard something. I says, you know what?
I can fit in here.
Conversation with people.
Yeah.
I know how to talk to people. And so I started listening to KGO every day.
To learn how.
To learn how you did it. I knew I could do music radio. I mean, I could walk in and play records and back sell them, but to learn how to do talk radio.
Here's the first rule that I want to tell you that they even forget now on network news. Tell me who you are talking to. Tell me when you start to talk to them. Tell me when you go to the break. Tell me when you come back, and tell me when you're done. And don't say, we're talking to Bob. I want to know his name and his title and why he's on your show. I want to know who he is. He's Bob Spolpakia, and he's the president of the Spolpakia Foundation, the most important store in San Francisco today. That's why we're talking to Bob Spolpakia. We'll be back after this.
Right. Although, it's funny. I listened to if you go on Twitter, you can host what they call a space. So a lot of what people will do now is like post game, the Mets will host a space. The New York Times will host a space, and it's just a short podcast type deal.
Is it a moderator?
Live.
Yeah.
And so yesterday I listened to the New York Times space with Maggie Haberman and talking about her book.
She's talking about that book all over the place.
I tell you what, man, her PR agent's doing a great job because she's everywhere.
Hey,
and she should be, because it's probably the most revealing book of all of the books that have been out.
And her contacts behind the scenes at the Trump administration and what's going on with this strange country of ours are pristine. And nobody says Maggie Haberman's a liar. Even Donald Trump keeps his trap shut on that one. She gets the facts, she gets the story, and she has other sources to back it up. And then she writes it beautifully for the best paper in the world. That's, if you want to be a journalist, try to be Maggie Haberman.
Yeah,
just try.
What she's doing.
And good luck to you.
Yeah, watch what she's doing, because she's doing it right. She's not rewriting press releases, let me tell you. She's going out and finding stuff out before it ever makes a press release. Anyway,
she doesn't read her email. She's rather busy.
So as I'm watching the space, I'm listening to it over there, and I'm saying, well, you know what? It's funny because now, I mean, I've listened to Maggie Haberman enough that I can tell her voice.
Hmm.
So I know who I'm listening to. But who is, you know, across the crawl on my screen, it's telling me who I'm listening to. So that, I think that people who do this fall into a habit of not telling you, not setting up who they're talking to. That
Right.
was something that Ron Owens, that Jim Eason, and that I'm trying to Lee Rogers, who
Yeah.
came over to replace Ron Owens when they slid Ron Owens into into the midday slot. Um,
They used him as a bait for a lot of things, Ron Owens.
yeah, and but he and and that station, I mean, it was must listen radio. Yeah, you can listen to music on the rocker or this or that or whatever. But to listen to KGO was to be informed.
And what other station in town was that committed to producing on a daily basis an intelligent adult current product? It's a very difficult thing to do. Because when you do a great scene, you call New York Vinnie, you have him on, he's a great guest. You say you're going to have him on again, then you throw the questions away and you start again for tomorrow with nothing.
Right.
And that's the killer about radio. You have to
And,
throw it away.
and even more important than that, Mikey, was the fact that KGO did not have an opinion. I'll tell you why now. It was at the start of the hottest guy in radio at that moment was Morton Downey Jr. And he would get callers on and he would embarrass them in
You
New
know
York.
who's you know who started that in LA at KLAC?
Was Joe Pine?
Bingo.
Yeah. Joe Pine, Alan Burke, those guys, they took, KGO took the Larry King approach
Yep.
to things. One guy, like, Ron Owens was kind of a liberal. Jim Eason was kind of a conservative. The news didn't
Well,
reflect, was neutral.
the kind of conservative that you could tell in the first 30 seconds.
Right. The only guy that really showed his stripes every day, as far as politically, was Ray Taliaferro, who was probably the closest thing to a communist we had that was on the air.
No, he was stronger than a communist. He was the staff announcer. He was the union man. He was the one that Mickey Luckoff would have fired 30,000 times if he had gotten his way. And Mickey Luckoff was the general manager who's credited with marshaling the station, and he deserves that credit. He deserves the accolades he's received. But if he wanted you out, you weren't there long. And I know he wanted Ray Taliaferro out.
Yeah, 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 but Taliaferro was fat. I mean, even though he was far left of what I was, he was still fascinating to listen to.
Oh, yeah. And he had a very distinct style. He was a
Right.
stylist.
He was so fascinating. He came out of the speaker at you, and I imagine that there's a lot of cars in the Bay Area who have dented dashboards from people punching it when Taliaferro would say things. But you
And
know what?
remember, he was the all night guy, and he had a good
Right.
audience.
He had
Yeah.
5 hours. I think 6 hours. I think he went from midnight. Maybe he went from 1 until 6. I don't quite remember now. It wasn't midnight. I think Lee Rogers went until 1, or Bernie Ward, or Ron Owens at the time. I think it was Owens, then Rogers, then Ward. But yeah, it was. He just. But he. But other than that, you you knew where the hosts stand, but they talked to people from. I mean, they could plug in Ron Owens with Ronald Reagan, and he was, nobody. It wasn't hate. No, there was no hate going on.
Well, we weren't there yet. I'm not saying the KGO would have mutated into something like that, It took KFI a while, and they flirted with Hate Talk. They can't seem to shake it. It
Right.
took WABC in New York embraced it entirely, wholly, and with both arms. Still, every day they embrace the Hate Talk, and what they've got for it is a station without ratings. WLS, a station without ratings. So if you want to blame Cumulus for this, you could say, well, okay, that's one station. What about the rest of their market? They own 408 stations in 86 markets. And they've got a 50,000 watt station in LA and San Francisco and can't get arrested. They could broadcast a help signal and no one would come because no one would hear it. The fact is, it takes unwavering skill and dedication to take 50,000 watt stations in 4 major markets into the toilet simultaneously. And when you get there, talk about what a wonderful company Cumulus Broadcasting is. Talk about the extraordinary successes you've had. Talk about the future of radio rests with Cumulus Broadcasting. And then look at the garbage and the wreck that they've left behind, and the careers that they've ruined, and the lies that they've told, and the crap that they've shoveled into the American media. And if anybody needs their stations simply taken away from them for the public interest, I would start with Cumulus.
Well, Mikey, I mean, there'll be so much more on Cumulus. I don't know how this format's going to go. I know there's a lot of people that bet on sports. If that's truly what they're going to go to, maybe they'll surprise everybody. Maybe it's a real stunt, and they have us talking. And on Monday morning at 6 o'clock, there'll be a news team sitting there, and they'll say, "The old KGO is back. We fooled you. Ha ha." I doubt that.
I doubt that.
But I just remember what a great radio. I mean, here I was. Grew up listening to WABC, which was very possibly the greatest music radio station ever. And I come to San Francisco, and now I'm listening to KGO. And I'm just, because there was no KFOG at the time. KFOG was beautiful music. There was KRQR. That was about it as far as rock and roll stations. Oh, and there was KGO FM, which was KSFX. Excuse me.
Correct.
KSFX
Correct.
down on Polk Street.
Yep.
And to listen to these people who knew how to do radio the way I thought radio should be done. Not yelling at people, not screaming at people, not being an idiot and telling people that they were wrong, even though they knew everything. They probably never let you know that they knew everything. They let the people talk. They let the guests. They weren't trying to they weren't trying to be better than the guests.
Well, one thing that they did well was they mirrored what was going on in the town that day. If there's a movie debuting in town, if there's a political speech being given in town, if there's a sports event coming to town, if they're filming a television series in town, if a new book is being brought to town by one of the California writers that they might pay attention to, that was what was going on that day in San Francisco. That's how they mirrored it. They didn't tell you what to do, which is what hate radio is all about. Here's who to hate, here's how to do it.
Right.
Here's where to get your t-shirt. They were talking about what was going on in your life, not in your politics. What was going on in your city, not in your imagination. What was happening that day in a great town, with the opportunity to tell you. And of course, we talk about their talk show format because it was unique and so muscular. It was so successful. It was so huge. They were number one for 50 books in a row or more than that.
Yeah.
Number one across the board, number 112 plus, number one wherever somebody can fight them for a piece of the action. They were still number one. And it was book after book after book after book for years, for decades. They did it.
It was so good. Tell you how good KGO was. in the ABC Broadcast Center in San Francisco. Now, traditionally, in any broadcast center, any place that has TV and radio, what happens, Michael? TV's on the top floor. They get the views. They get everything.
Radio's in
Radio
the shack.
in a closet somewhere.
Yeah.
At at Battery Street, where the no, what Battery's the next one over, Front 900 Front. At 900 Front, radio was upstairs and had all the views. Roland Galley, who was the sales manager, probably had the best view of any radio executive in San Francisco.
And he was the one guy who could look out his window and actually see his market because
Yeah,
he owned it.
yeah, exactly. And television was on the second floor.
Van Amberg didn't go up. Van Amberg and Jerry Jensen didn't have to go upstairs to get to work.
Right. It was something that always struck me because any radio station I'd ever been, anything that had a combo like that. I remember over here at Cairo, I mean, I had radio at Cairo in a closet before they moved over to East Lake.
Did they put AM and FM in this?
They used to have to push Wayne Cody in there to do the sports updates.
And did they have one closet for AM and for FM?
I think they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did.
You don't get two closets.
And I remember that impressed me so when I saw them, when I got to go down there and visit for the first time of many times that I went down here and visited people and talked to people and but another thing that the KGO did so well besides touch people, I think, Michael, was that they developed callers. I remember Ron Owens, when he was on in the evenings, used to have a kid that would come on. I can't remember his name for the life of me.
Call him Junior.
What?
Call him Junior.
Junior. And this kid was probably 12, 13 years old, maybe. But Ron would have him on once a week. And the kid would come on and they would talk about things he knew. It's so long ago, I forget exactly what the hook was with the kid. But I know that Ron had him on all the time.
So he was a bit of a savant.
Yeah. Ron Owens used to do rock and roll trivia on Friday night. Friday night was entertainment night, no matter what.
With Dave Sholin, right?
I think so, yes. I think so. Because he moved it to the days. When he went to the days, he still did it. But he would only do it for like an hour.
Yeah, right.
And this kid, had like a fan club. And I remember when Ron actually came up to Seattle a number of years later and came because Ken Berry, who was the news director at KGO, was moved up and became our program director. And Ron was up in Seattle and he visited Ken. And I walked in, and I met Ron and talked to Ron. And I said, well, whatever happened to that kid? And the kid passed away.
Wow.
And when I heard that, I felt like I lost a member of my family. Because you built up relationships with some of the listeners, callers, as if they were part of the tapestry of the show.
You can have regulars that aren't a burden to the show. They actually contribute to the show.
Right. That you and that's something that I learned from them, is to have people that, Tom Lee told us this many years ago. Your callers are your records. So if you can't go out and buy good record, or if they don't send you good records, the record company, what do? You got to go out and you got to buy records. So you go to the guy at the hot dog stand, or you go to the toll taker, or you go, hey, why don't you come on my show sometime?
I had toll takers on the show.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that it's work, but that's another thing that I learned from, again, that and with Ron Owens and all of these guys, was the 6-week rule. Is where you have regular guests that come on every 6 weeks. So you
Mhm.
had, I forget the name of the guy. They had a tech guy that would come on, and he would talk about all the new kind of tech stuff.
Leo
You
Laporte.
had a movie guy. He would be on. The movie guy would be on more often. But there was a car guy who would come on and talk about what was going on in the car business. There was a music guy besides the trivia guy who would come on, besides Dave, would come on and talk about things. And you built up this panel of experts, and you did them for an hour, not a whole show, just an
And
hour.
and those are the people you call on when news breaks.
And you had this stable of people that you could call, and more often than not, the news department would take something out of the show and develop a story on it from the news.
That's what you do. You got all these experts on the air. Cut it into 10 seconds and give me a story out of it. By the way, KGO had a full news department. They had news blocks morning and afternoon. They were unbeatable. When I worked at KCBS, my beloved program director, Ed Cavanero, would not say the letters K, G, and O. He called it Brand X in his memos. He never said KGO in person. He never said KGO except in his dreams. KGO. And I think that's the kind of war you have to wage, because and now look who won that war. Ed Cavanero, after all that, who lasted the longest. And what does it say about the business that we are in, the business we have chosen? That you own 408 radio stations and can't run one that works like a lead pipe. It should work like a like a gypsy trick in the street. This should work. There should be profit. There should be listeners. There should be a wonderful format. There should be magic. There should be a daily delving into the sounds of the city, the news of the world, the excitement of being in Northern California or anywhere in California. Because they got the same problem here in LA, where KABC is 50,000 watts and nothing. Nobody cares.
And the same problem here in Seattle.
And I'm not saying this to put these people down. I'm saying it because it hurts to see it. It hurts to experience it, and hurts to see that somebody has given you a 50,000 watt blowtorch on the West Coast and you can't figure out a way to get anyone to listen to you. Impossible.
And listen, I'll know that the radio people will come back, the programming people, and not that we know everything about programming a radio station, but we've been around long enough to. Wait a minute, I just noticed something.
What happened?
I wanted to see if I could get the hat under my
Oh, I
head.
see. Yeah, you got it.
Sorry.
But you gotta tilt your head the way the tug is tilting. That's there you go. No more that way. More this. Yeah, there we go. Now put your finger up.
Just
Hey,
caught my eye.
we got Mets baseball today, so, and Mariner
Yes.
baseball too, 1 o'clock.
Anyway, so it's gone. It's in the wind. Nobody will ever. I don't think anybody will ever do that again. Because radio will never be that way again. I'm glad that, and I think probably I can speak for you as well, as I was. One of my regrets in the radio business is that I didn't get to work at KGO, because that's the station there was 2 stations I wanted to work. I wanted to work at WABC in New York, and I wanted to work at KGO in San Francisco.
But as I always say, when you make these wish lists about stations where you want to work, be very careful what you wish for.
Yeah,
And
well,
and
listen,
also
I wanted to
and
work
also
at KDKA too, and I got my wish, and what happened? So
I rest my case. I always wanted to work at KSAM. When I got there, it was country. So be careful what you ask for. Not. And it wasn't that I didn't. I worked with a lot of good people. It's just that my dream was to play rock and roll, not to play Waylon Jennings, as much as I like Waylon Jennings.
But for radio people, true radio people, and I think you tell me if I'm wrong or not, still having the call letters on your resume still means something. It's still like you didn't work at KSN in the Tom O'Donoghue days. But you worked there at some point, and so you worked under those calls. I don't know. I always thought. I mean, I didn't work at KDK. Well, I did actually work at AM too. So I got lucky enough that I worked there. Um, I always wanted to work at the Fan in New York. I always thought that that would be cool. And although I was on the Fan several times, and we did our show from the Fan Studios,
You sure did.
and I did my show when I was in Pittsburgh from the Fan Studios on a number of occasions. I got to know the engineers and the people there really well. I never got to host a show on the Fan, and I always thought that that would have been for me would have been the greatest thing in the world because all the people I grew up with that are still alive would have heard it.
Yeah.
Would have. And they heard me when I would do stuff. You know, a couple of shows there would call me to do stuff. And I think the same for you, Michael. I mean, if you would have been, I mean, there's something about this business that draws you in because it's a way for you to, I don't know, to satisfy your ego, is it?
I don't
Really?
know what it is. I remember as a kid coming to LA with my dad. He was down on business, and it was my first trip to LA. And I was, I don't know, 12, something like that. And looking at the long boulevards with the palm trees on both sides, I'm going, wow, it's different here. The same bread that we have has a different label on it down here. They call it a different thing. The cars look different because they have their license plate numbers aren't like ours. They're in a different section. You know, we're only on the C's and D's, and they're on the X's and F's, and little things that you notice about how different it is. And of course, the radio. I was a stone cold radio freak when I was a kid, and KEWB and KYA were my stations. KDIA. Then I get to LA, and here's Gary Owens, who I used to listen to on KEWB. He's doing the mornings on KFWB. B. Mitchell Reed, who used to be an MCA good guy, is
Yeah.
coming out and talking fast and doing his Beamer jive in the evenings. Bobby Dale, who I've heard in the Bay Area, is now on KFWB and later on KRLA. And I had no idea at that time that I would be on KFWB, not once but twice. And it was probably the greatest freak out ever, is to do the lockout on KFWB as part of my job. It was just so cool. It was so satisfying. And I got to KEWB, but by that time it was KNEW. So I got to work on that spot on the dial, but not for that format or for those calls.
Yeah.
And that just means a lot. That means a huge chunk of your life is dedicated to something that you've already dreamt. You already had the dream. Now it's time to live it for a while. And there wouldn't be a radio industry without that feeling. There wouldn't be a radio industry without that way for people to proceed through their careers. You would give a fortune to work on certain stations. I would give a fortune to have two stations, AM, FM, standalone in a market. I want to say to Cumulus, you've got KABC, you've got WLS, you've got WABC, you've got these stations that you can't seem to get arrested for broadcasting on. Your signal is not going anywhere, and people are not responding. You're not doing it in what we would call a commercial fashion. Do you have a commercial product? Do you have something you can sell? Do you have does your content allow your salespeople to go to the street and make a deal right now and make long-term relationships work because of the audience you're able to deliver? Well, you know the answer. The answer is no. If people don't want to listen to it, who wants to buy it? Nobody. That's the commercial side of radio that many people can't appreciate. If you don't have a good product, you can't pay the rent. You can't pay the PG&E bill for your transmitter.
It's hard to get people to do this anymore because you have to apprentice. Many people don't, some people just walk into a studio and they do it. But to do
But
it
who wants
to do it long term, you have to. There's a learning curve that goes into it. You have to listen to something else that gives you not all of your ideas, but a structure to make it work. And listen, nowadays, some kid can jump on YouTube, get a million, get 100,000 followers, get a million hits, and make $50,000 a year.
I would show our format, the one that we use so successfully here, as the first hour, 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. It's called Mikey and Vinnie Talk. We don't say it on the air. That's what that hour is. What do they talk about? Don't worry. When's the first break? Well, you can have it at 10 or you can have it at 20. Let's wait till 20. And then what? Just watch Vinnie. He'll tell you. We're coming up. It's 22 past the hour. You're listening to Mikey Vinnie. This is the new show. We've been talking about blah, blah, blah. We'll be back after this. And what will we do? Mikey and Vinnie talk. That's the format. Now, if you have Soupy Sales and his sidekick, then the format is Soupy Sales talks until 20 after. What's he talk about? Don't ask me, and don't ask Soupy. For God's sake, don't ask him what he's going to do before the show. Let him sit there in the chair as the network news is ending, and it'll come to him.
And you know what, Mikey? That was the beauty of KGO.
Yeah.
That was the absolute beauty of KGO, is that it wasn't conservative talk. It wasn't music talk. It wasn't this talk. It wasn't that talk. It was people talking to people, bringing up interesting subjects, covering the news. But it wasn't just news talk.
No,
it was life talk.
Really, the sound of the life in the city, the sound of life in Northern California.
It talked about the music that was going on. It talked about the arts that were going on. It talked about the people in the street. It talked about the bus drivers. It talked about the cab drivers.
If Beta Breakers is coming this weekend, you're going to have somebody from the race, some madcap person who runs as a centipede every year.
Yeah, it talked about Ocean Beach, and it talked about what was going on with Carol Doda. And matter of fact, she would come on, right? Carol Doda would be on KGO 4 or 5 times a year.
Of course she would, and you'd love to hear it.
Yeah, it talked about the Mabuhay, and that's what we saw. It brought us all together in a place where it wasn't so much about politics. It wasn't about what we didn't like about each other. It was about what we liked about each other, what we liked about the place that we lived. We didn't key in on the bad stuff where we lived.
One thing you got to do when you have that kind of show, great guests, but you've got to have an opinion. Now, Vinnie, you're never short of opinions, but it's not good enough to come on and say, those Denver Broncos, did you see how they suck last night? They stink and they stink. Well, okay, we all saw that. Tell me 3 things about why they stink. They didn't run the ball, and they threw the ball instead, and Russell Wilson had many opportunities to score, got in the red zone how many times, and couldn't score a touchdown. And you have to examine everything about the way they call plays. That's why they stink. Look at the plays they called. They designed themselves out of that game. Denver should have won, but no, they had another idea. So your opinion, Vinnie, on that game would have been what drove the show. Here's what they did.
Right.
Here's what they did wrong. Here's how they can fix it next week.
Right. And also what they did, on the weeks that they did things right. Boom. It's not. You don't hate everything in the world. You like things in the world. Now, yeah, I'm a million radio programmers will call me up and say, "Oh, well, people don't react to that." But they do. You just have to train them a little bit.
You know what, Vin? Listening to the great days of KGO is what consultants did so they could sell their ideas to people who didn't have any ideas. No consultant came in 5 minutes before Jim Easton's show and said, "Now, Jim, here's a couple of things we want you to say, phrases for you to use, and setups that have worked elsewhere, and it's going to work for you too. So when you come on, here's what you say, here's what you do. Don't have that guest. I heard that guest. Yeah, you're gonna bring the psychic back on. The psychic doesn't work. I told you that last week." And that's how to get Jim Easton to be from number 1 to number 15 in one book.
Easton would look up at the consultant over his glasses. Say, "Get the hell out of my studio."
Yeah.
And if you ain't out by the time I raise my head,
And ask a consultant sometime, how come we can't have a format like KGO had? He'd say, well, first of all, who? Oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. That doesn't exist anymore.
You
We're
gotta
not.
have the people, Michael. You have to invest in the people. You can't have $10 an hour help and expect to do KGO.
And you got to have a team.
You have to have a team. You have to have promotion. I mean, you just got. I'm just thinking about all of the people. I mean, one of the coolest things in the world was on the weekend night, Saturday and Sunday night. There you are listening to Dr. Bill Wattenberg. Now, who the hell was Dr. Bill Wattenberg?
He
He
was a
was
man with a
probably
voice.
the smartest guy on the planet.
He
I
knew
mean,
it.
this guy, you could call him up and say, Dr. Bill, how does what type of fuel do they use to eject the stages of the Atlas rocket as it climbs through the perisphere, which is just above, and Bill would, well,
Interrupt.
let me start telling you here. And he had that deep voice, and it sounded like a professor. I think he was a professor, actually. And he would tell you what kind of fuel and give you the exact, okay, boom, hang up the phone. Dr. Bill, hey, good to talk to you. I got a mouse under my porch.
Yeah.
Well, you get a little bit of peanut butter and you put it
Yeah.
on the thing and you put it under the thing and you'll hear the snap. And next caller, Dr. Bill, my generator in my car only gives me 11 volts. And all night,
Yeah.
he would take everybody's question.
Smartest man in the world. How did he?
He must have been, because he knew everything. And let me tell you something. You can do it today because you got Google. This dude didn't have Google.
No, he
didn't
was.
have, a
He was
search.
Google.
This was his Google right here.
In fact, they
I
shouldn't call it Google. They should call it Wattenberg.
really, I have to think that the people that invented Google listened to KGO and said, "Boy, how can we put that in a computer?"
How can we get that at everybody's fingertips?
Right? How do we get that in everybody's fingertips? And
And the answer is liquid hydrogen.
liquid hydrogen.
Give the man a
They probably
T-shirt.
never asked the guy who could have told them how to do it, Bill Wattenberg.
Yes.
Oh man, well it's just I know we've been eulogizing KGO this morning, and I feel bad for the people I know that still work there, and so many of the people that were gone. Were gone. Plus, we always forget this, Michael. To break up the day at 12, what was it, 12:35, or maybe it was 12. Maybe it was 12:25. You had Paul Harvey. Good day. Just to break everything up.
And again in the afternoon.
And again, well, in the afternoon they did the rest of the story, which was like the shorter
Right.
version.
feature.
But they didn't want to take up because he ran like 15 minutes, I think.
Well, he had a 60-second live read
Yeah,
that he
which
mixed
he
in with
turned
it.
into 15 minutes.
Which, yeah, right.
But
One
they're
of the things that
fabulous.
when I think about KGO, I think about the early days of San Francisco radio, early days when the red and blue networks were broadcasting. KNBR, which became KNBC, was KPO, and its sister station on the blue network was KGO. And you could pick which one of the NBC stations you wanted to listen to. Should we listen to KPO tonight? Should we listen to KGO tonight? And it was a simpler time, but at least those people in the infancy of radio had what KGO can't muster to put together right now, and that is an audience. Anybody who gives a damn, someone who's going to listen to them and ride to work with them. They haven't got that. They had the opposite. We have a product that you won't listen to. We have a product that you can't commit to. We have talent that you are not endeared about. And we have a morning to evening format that we have studied and put in place and paid people to execute that you don't want to hear. That's our glory. That's the glory of modern radio, the glory of Cumulus Broadcasting.
One of the great I mean, there was a lot of good stuff about KGO. So much good stuff we could never fit into the time that we have to do this. But I just, I always remember Dunbar and Wygant in the morning. Jim Dunbar and Ted Wygant were the consummate morning guys. Always cheery, always playing with each other just enough, just different enough. And in the afternoon, I had Ed Baxter and Rosie Allen
Forever.
forever. And I remember when they moved. Do you remember when KGO went to FM, went to Sex Talk for about a year?
No, not really.
They went KGO FM probably in 83, 82, something like that. They had a format that was Sex Talk.
Well, they did that at KROQ down here, the alternative rock station. They had Loveline.
Yeah, was that Dr. Drew, right? Or
Dr. Drew before he got his Porsche.
yeah. Hey, if you have a Porsche, you don't need to listen about sex on the radio. It's a very.
You're giving me advice on sex talk, and what's your advice? And his advice was get yourself a Porsche.
Exactly. And listen, they also roll the dice on Dr. Dean Adele. I mean, who knew Dr. Dean Adele before KGO? And Dr. Dean became what Dr. Oz could have been.
The Sanjay Gupta of his day.
Yeah. I mean, Dr. Dean, when you had I remember a story where I'm trying to remember exactly how it worked, but Dr. Dean was one of the people had discovered a thing called mitral valve prolapse. Prolapse or something like that happened to women in their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like the first guy ever to know about this. And he talked about it on the radio. And I remember somebody called up their mother in back east was having a problem with their heart.
Yo mama.
And this guy called and said, tell the doctor to look for this MTP, whatever it is. And they looked at it and they operated on the mother and saved her life.
Wow.
Because she had, and doctors hadn't heard much about this. But Dean Adele talked about it on the radio.
Who, I know you're going to remember this name, who on the KGO station, TV and radio, talked about vegetables all the time?
Dr. Leo Cellino. Oh,
Dr.
no. Oh, man. Tony Tantillo is the guy that does it in New York. And, oh, crap. Oh, man, what's his name? Oh, give me a second. I can't remember.
I can't either.
Oh, well. Oh, crap. I wish.
Wait, Joe Carcione. Joe Carcione,
that's right. Because it was Leo Cellino did the weather and Joe Carcione. Because they parodied him. Was it Saturday Night Live or maybe Almost Live?
Probably.
As Joe Carcinogen.
Right.
he would show you everything that was bad to eat for you.
And his whole career was he was a lovable, outgoing, loud, energetic personality. And his thing was food, vegetables.
Yeah.
You go on about zucchini. He go on about what's the difference between a kumquat and a loquat, for crying out loud. Don't make me tell you again.
I met him at, I was shopping one day in Molly Stone's. Remember Molly Stone's?
I do indeed.
I was shopping in Molly Stone's, and he was in the produce department looking around. It wasn't a remote or anything. He just happened to be in there.
Well, if I was explaining this to the consultant, so I got a guy who comes on, he talks about tomatoes, he talks about and the consultant would go, oh God, we have a lot of work to do. No, put that aside. We're not starting there. No, you don't understand. It's not about the zucchini. It's about Joe. It's Joe Carcione.
Right.
Well, I never heard of him. This isn't going to work.
Well, again, what KGO did so well is they found personalities
Yep.
that did things that people did every day. The traffic people were personalities.
Yep.
Katie Lever, I remember, was a great personality, and a woman up in a helicopter, flying around. Stan Burford, another guy that was a personality. It wasn't just they weren't just giving you traffic; they were guiding you through the Dumbarton. They were telling you don't go on a Dumbarton Bridge. You don't want to go on a Dumbarton Bridge. Go around, go up, go down 6-8. But um, Leo Cellino doing the weather.
Right.
Here's a guy you listen to. Why? Because he had his weather watcher up in, Santa Rosa, who the woman who would go out on her back porch and tell Leo Cellino how cold it was in Santa Rosa that morning.
And if you're driving to work, and you're the driver and you're in charge of the volume, yeah, that's the type of thing. Hey, you got to listen to this. No, I want to hear this. Yeah. What about tomatoes? Yeah, I want to hear what Joe's got to say.
Yeah, and later on they brought in who was the guy, the nutty guy who went to New York and was there? Lloyd Lindsay Young.
Yep, right.
They had personality, and the one guy I remember, I always, they were just favorite people I had there. And one of the guys was Steve Walsh, who was Bill Walsh's son.
Mm-hmm.
And he was into trains. And they let him go out. He didn't just do trains. He was a news reporter. But they also got their news reporters to do features. And he, for some reason, would always do, probably because he loved trains, would do 3 or 4 train features every year. And I like trains. So I connected with him on that level of talking about, he talked about Caltrans. He talked about he was over in Oakland at the train, just telling you what was going on with the trains, man. And if you're a model railroader, if you're a train fan, a rail fan, if you're one of those people that like that, you listen to Steve because he knew what he was talking about.
So, Vinnie, now that we're coming to the end of this show on a Freaky Friday, Fractious Friday, which we use that phrase in honor of the real Don Steele, what do we say to the people who are thinking about turning on their radio today and listening to something as they drive across LA? Are we optimistic that the radio, if given the right amount of loving care, can be successful, or are we pessimistic that the glory days are gone? There's nothing to replace them, and the business has changed so much that there doesn't seem to be a future for radio the way we knew it or way that we remember it.
There are people who I guess are meeting in New York this week or next week. I forget when the NAB is going on, and they're trying to sit in a room and they're trying to figure out what to do with radio, how to make, especially AM radio, how to make it work. And here's my suggestion: take this show and take the show we did on Wednesday, sit in a room and listen to what we tell you. And take the best of it, because there's some goofy stuff in there too. We're a couple goofballs. But
well, that's better. But that's better than having only one goofball in the room by himself. If you have a couple of goofballs, now
you got some balls.
You got a format.
Take those balls and go out and do something.
I see what you've got here, but you're short one goofball. Do you know where to get one?
As they used to, as Groucho would always say, no, I've got 4 of them out in the hallway. And a blonde as well.
Oh, Dr. Hack in the Bush.
And that's what you have to do. You got to connect. You got to give people something they're not getting anywhere else. And this country is lonely right now. There are a lot of lonely people in this country. And those people need something more than a podcast to listen to. They need interaction. They need to be able to pick up their cell phone and talk to somebody. Not just text somebody, talk to somebody. They need to talk to somebody on a long trip that they're driving in their car. They need to talk to somebody when they're sitting in their house alone at night watching some stupid ass television show. They need to talk to somebody. And if you want to fix radio, talk to the people and let the people talk. And you'll fix radio, Michael.
Well, one of the things that we have that I find so hard to believe is that the hate talk thing sold so well. That hating your brother, hating your fellow citizen, hating a Democrat, hating a Republican became so much fun. To get up in the morning angry, get your dose of 10 to 2 hate talk on your way to work, get to work angry, judge the people around you for who they are and who you want them to be, and how your judgment of them far exceeds their ability to be what you want. How come they can't be like you? How come they can't hate like you? How come they can't organize their life on the negatives like you have? And with the help of a syndicated talker who's not even in the little station that you listen to on your way down to a Dumpy's breaks and transmissions. And when you get to Dumpy's breaks and transmissions in the morning, and you start working on your first job, what are you thinking about? That your customer's black and you hate them? That your customer's Latino and you're never going to work for that kind of person again? That someone in your position should never have to lower themselves to mix with the mud races of America? That you've come to grips with what's wrong with America, and the answer is everything except you. You're right, they're wrong, and you hate them for it.
Yep.
And nowhere along the line do you get a giggle. Do you get to laugh at the weather? Do you get to laugh at the traffic? That a human does not entertain you for any 60-second section of that day? You're left unentertained and unchallenged. You don't learn anything. You don't know more than you did when you left, and you get to work on somebody's transmission in a really pissed off mood.
Yeah,
And if you
it's so true.
and
It's
there
so
you go. And it's the same thing if you're making enchiladas. You're pissed off. How good are those enchiladas going to be?
It's so true, Michael. It's such a great observation. Is that, when you would go to work listening to music, or you would go to work listening to news or talk or something like that, yeah, you'd be a little pissed off at things. But you get there and you talk to your friends, you have a cup of coffee, yada yada yada, and you go to work and you're happy. If you got Joe Rogan blowing in your freaking ear for the hour drive to work, that, oh, this guy's getting this and you're not, and that guy's getting that and you're not, and this is this and that's that, and we got to do this and we got to do that, and don't take the vaccine and don't do this and don't do that.
And
if
remember,
you listen to that shit for long enough, you're going to start to believe it.
And parts of what Joe Rogan says may or may not be true, but that's not the important part. The point is that he said it and you heard it.
And they trade on that relationship that still exists between radio and the listener. There's a relationship there of trust, of obedience, of community. It's just that the words that are coming out right now are the wrong words.
And they do damage. They do so much damage. And look at the mess. And look at the mess around the sedition trial in New York going on right now, where these poor idiots, actually it's Washington, these poor idiots are confessing to crimes that they committed against their own country, that they committed in the hopes of violence, that they committed in the hopes of a violent takeover of the government. This was their hope. This was their dream. This is what they had organized for. This is why the guy shot out his own eye. This is why they wear silly little uniforms and stand at attention in the middle of the town square. This is why they come to the 4th of July party and ruin everything. These are the guys who what did they want? Did they wanted to be Boy Scouts? They wanted to be troopers in the army. They wanted to be Marines when they grew up, and it never happened.
Do you think it's what they wanted, Michael? Or do you think that, much like rock and roll in the 50s, that this thing was coming out of the radio that they could feel a part of. They didn't feel a part of church. They didn't feel a part of the community center. They didn't feel a part of the neighbors. You know, they didn't feel a part of that. But all of a sudden, they hear this stuff coming out of the radio, this hate. I don't know that these people grew up thinking, I want to take over the government.
You know, that brings up something that always drove me crazy. Radio stations are supposed to be the source of information, and they all have websites, and they make their people contribute to the websites, and everybody has to write for the. And I have never seen such discombobulated trash as a radio station website. There is nothing on there I want to read. There is no picture that I want to see from your hot dog giveaway over the weekend. The content that's supposed to be there to drive me to your website, to make me part of your family, and to make me listen is simply not there. It's not there in any way, shape, or form. That must mean that the content that they keep talking about doesn't exist. It's not really there. You got one guy in a room sitting by himself. What's he going to do? Spend 2 hours on the computer after that writing a blog that no one's going to read, or a mention of something going on that no one's going to hear?
No, if you want to, if you have a radio station website and you don't want to spring for the money to hire people to write for it,
Exactly.
then you should just take sound clips of your interviews and put them on the website so people can go to it later and listen. That's it.
That's about it. That's it.
That's it. And you know, at the bottom of it, feed the police scanner into it so people can listen to that or something like that. But
That's a good idea.
We had to, when I was at KDKA, we had to write, I don't know, I think it was 3 articles a week for the website. Now, for me, it wasn't hard because I got them to agree to let me write about cars. And so it was really easy just to boom, 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 you know, and bang out a car review. Took me, 15 minutes, couple of pictures, put it into the WordPress, and it was up on the CBS website. As a matter of fact, one year they actually flew me to New York to do the auto show. But to have to sit there and just regurgitate what I just talked about on the air with Ron Cook for 4 hours would have made me puke. It was disgusting to sit there and have to slam the coach, do this, do that. Sorry. But that wasn't what it was supposed to be about.
It was just content.
Yeah,
It was just so-called content.
I had another thing that I could do besides just sports, but I couldn't imagine having to just sit there and write about what I just talked about for 4 hours. After I talk about something for 4 hours, Michael, I want to just not talk about it anymore. I want to go home. I want to relax so I can watch a game that night or go home or get away or do something. Go for a drive. Go for a hamburger. Go see a movie about Disney. I don't know.
Go back to hamburger.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that. Can we get a cheeseburger?
With onions if you'd like.
And extra fries? Are they crispy fries?
Sure. Mikey,
Okay.
you want crispy, you want wedgies, you want crinkle cut, you want curly. We got them all. That's what America is. You're supposed to be able to get every kind of fry you want. And in Pittsburgh, we even served a salad with the fries on it.
You know what? That's meeting me more than halfway because I want a salad, but I see the fries. I'm interested. How can we possibly put these two together so that I can have both? And Pittsburgh has answered that question.
One grand day, Michael, you and I are going to go to Pittsburgh.
I know where we're going.
And we're going to go to Primanti's.
Yes.
And we're going to scarf down a Primanti sandwich and a salad with French fries. Both our hearts will probably seize up afterwards. But
imagine Primanti's owning KGO. They would be so sad today because all they know is that their product has resonated and sold with millions of people. They can't make those sandwiches fast enough to keep up with the demand. People like the sandwich. They've had the sandwich. They want to go back and have another sandwich, and they're telling other people about the sandwich. That's a hit. It's a hit. Not today, but for the perceivable future. Primanti's is going to be making those sandwiches, and if you're going to love it the way you did today, is the way you did it when you were 12 years old.
They're going to make they're the exact same sandwich that when they started those sandwiches in the 30s. Their first place was down in the Strip District, which at the time was where the produce terminal was.
Joe Carciani.
And the truckers would come in, and the truckers wanted a sandwich, a meal that they could hold in one hand and eat while they were driving the truck. So the Primanti took the Italian bread, took the meat, the protein, took an egg and put it on there, and some coleslaw, and put French fries on top of the coleslaw. So you could eat it all with one hand while you were driving a truck.
How many gears do you think are in those trucks?
10, probably. So, some of them 7 to 10.
So there's a
you
few.
got
There's
the sandwich in your hand, and you're moving the gear shift, but you're going back up, and you got your, flask of coffee on the seat, and you're going back to the farm to pick up another load of produce. You're doing it at night. And, trucks back then weren't like trucks today. I mean, trucks back then were hard to drive. There was no power steering or no power brakes, man. I mean, those things. And if you were a trucker, you were working all night, man. You wasn't this 8-hour, I take a rest stop kind of deal. This was like I take a couple of bennies and I, go all night because that's how I make my living. And I stop at a seedy-ass little side thing. But instead, I can go to Primanti's and I get a sandwich and fries and everything are all on it. And I take off and I'm back in Bethlehem in 3 hours.
And if the Primantis were there in the front office of a radio station like KGO, they say, all I can tell you is we make a sandwich that everybody loves. How come you don't make anything that people love? How come people aren't coming to the door to get what you make? How come people aren't demanding that you make more of it? Hey, don't change a thing. Don't change that sandwich. Put the fries back where you always put them. Don't make any changes because we love it just the way it is. And I'm having one now. I'm going to have another one tomorrow. And I don't think the Primanti people would understand broadcasting where your product sucks and you allow it to suck.
No, if they're, the great thing about a Primanti, about Primanti and the sandwich and the whole place is that they probably have about, 8 or 10 of them in the Pittsburgh area. And every Primanti you go to, you get the same sandwich. It's not a different sandwich here and a little bit of a different sandwich there. The eggs don't taste different here than they do in the North Hills. They don't taste, they taste the same in Mount Lebanon. The sandwich tastes the same in Mount Lebanon as it does in the Strip District or up in the North Hills. It's the same.
It must be. It has to be.
It's consistent. It satisfies you. It fills you up. It's different, and it's unique. And it's good. It's worth whatever you pay for it. I don't know what it is now. Probably, $10.
Probably more.
Probably more, yeah. But it's it's worth it's worth every dime you pay for it. Mikey, I know that we're up against it, but there's a couple of things I want to cover before we go. I actually wrote things down today, believe it or not, because I knew we were going to have a crazy show. Playoffs, who do you like?
Well, I said I was going with the Mets, so I'm going to go with the Mets and the Mariners because the Mariners is my emotional attachment to baseball. Yeah. But the Mets, I got to have a team, and I don't have the team that I have decided that they didn't want to participate in any postseason play, that they had things that they wanted to do that had nothing to do with baseball. And by the way, I suspected this all season long. These guys have something on their mind, but it doesn't appear to be baseball because they're not that interested in
the season.
San Francisco Giants did not score runs like you're supposed to score runs if your intent is to win the game. So those are my two.
Do you like the format where I'm looking at a Cleveland game right now, Cleveland and the Blue Jays, and
The Blue Jays should be playing the
The
Mariners.
Guardians just won 2-1 the first game, but the stadium appeared to be a quarter to a half empty.
Is this in Toronto?
No, this is in Cleveland.
A day game on a Friday. What's going on, Cleveland?
Well, it was a 12 o'clock in the afternoon game.
And it's on TV locally, I assume.
And it's on TV locally. Yeah, it's on ESPN. I mean, I love the idea of playing these games. Baseball seems to have taken a page out of the NCAA.
Except baseball has to come forward with the NIL figures, the NIL likeness, image, and what's the N stand for?
I don't know. You stumped me.
Because college football had a chance to come up with their numbers. How many dollars are involved with the kids getting their name, image, and likeness?
Well,
and not one college has declared a penny earned by the students on that, and they have those figures, and they're keeping them quiet.
Well, I like the idea of seeing day baseball, if nothing else.
Oh yeah, I love day baseball.
And I think that in time, people will. This will become, if they keep this format, which who knows if they're even gonna. I think it'll become, more and more of a special thing, because in essence, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create the same buzz that you have for the NCAA tournament. They're trying to. If you go on a Major League Baseball website, it's all in brackets. It's all with seeding numbers. It looks like it's a basketball tournament.
Let's just hope it's as good as a basketball tournament.
Well, a 2-1 game in Cleveland. From what I saw, if you like pitching duels, this was a pretty damn good game.
I thought the Mariners were playing the Blue Jays today at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, yeah, is the Mariners Blue Jays. And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about and just get your thoughts on was what should have happened 25 years ago happened yesterday. We finally have a president who stood up and said, you know what? It's wrong that people's lives get ruined because they got caught with a nickel bag of pot when they were 18 years old or 20 years old or 25 or 30. How many people do you know that might not have been able to get a job, a good job, or might not have been able to buy a house or do something or get into housing because they had a pot bust on their record?
How about the fact that the credit card companies of America will do business with any low-life crud of a business or a Ponzi scheme or an outright charlatan, but they won't let you buy marijuana on a credit card?
Yeah, isn't that something? Isn't that something? You can gamble on a credit card, can't you?
Oh boy.
You can go down to a casino, because I've done it.
Bring it in, heat it up.
Say, give me $500 on my credit card, and piss that away in 15 minutes at the crap table.
Faster than that, Vinny. You got to pick up the speed. If you got $500, let's make sure it's gone in 10 minutes.
At least with the pot, if you buy $500 worth of pot, you're going to have 490 of it sitting in there when you're done, because you can't smoke that much.
However, some people get forgetful. So don't forget where you left your $490 of pot, because it's back in the room. And I told you to pack it, but you wouldn't listen to me because you were high.
Well, I packed it and went to Russia, and look what happened.
The thing to do is have a joint, go to Primanti's, take the rest of the thing in the trunk, and you'll be fine.
Primanti's is probably, now, I've stopped smoking pot for a long time, but I'm going to tell you, Primanti's, if I was going to start smoking pot again, Primanti's would be like my number one. White Castle was always my favorite destination. Open 24 hours. If you had $2, you could get a meal.
I've got sliders in the freezer.
Yeah, hamburgers were 12 cents. So for $2 you can get hamburgers, fries, and an orange drink. But Primanti's would be my second choice, because you can get a sandwich that take you 25 minutes to eat.
Well, today, of course, it's easier to go to In-N-Out, but because we don't have Primanti's here, and damn you, the Primanti family, for not opening something in LA like that.
Well, you know what, Mikey? I think the thing with Primanti's is it's quaint and it's nice because it's a regional thing.
It's Pittsburgh only.
Yeah, it's there's something about and that we've lost in America with these regional restaurants. You know, now every exit on an interstate has a McDonald's. So all these people, you know, they get off the interstate, they go through the drive-through at McDonald's, and get back on the interstate. When I traveled cross country many times, there was a Stuckey's, but you get a hot dog at a Stuckey's or a.
What about a patty melt? I judge the kitchen by their ability to do a patty melt with the
Well, the
onions
patty
and
melt,
dry.
most of the time you had to go into town.
Yeah.
You had to go in and you had to go into a coffee shop or a diner or some kind of restaurant. You had to sit down and the waitress came over to you. Oh, you're not from town. Oh yeah, well,
Vinny,
you know.
you started this with Primanti's, then we got to the cheeseburger. We've done White Castle, and now I have a patty melt on my problem. I'm getting seriously hungry here. And this has got to stop, this whole
Well, it's
business.
even like ice cream, Michael. I mean, you would go to different places to get ice cream.
A vanilla malted. I gotta go down there. I gotta get down to Pie and Burger before the lunch rush here at the corner.
I'm trying to complete you out, you know. But
You know who you see at Pie and Burger in Pasadena, California,
no,
eating pies, having their burger and their vanilla malted.
Oliver Hardy.
No, all the top students and professors at Caltech University.
Really?
The smartest people on the planet know about their pie and their burger, and that's where they get it.
I like the name of the place, Pine.
And you can walk if you're on the campus of Caltech.
Next time I'm down there, and I am going to this winter, I promise you, Michael, I'm going to get in the car and drive down there. We're going to do a live show together at some point during the winter because I am not sitting up here when it's dark at 3:30 in the afternoon all winter.
You know where we are, Vin. Welcome to California. Y'all are welcome.
I'm telling you right now, man, I'm going to take a week or 2 weeks, and I'm just going to get on the road and get out of the darkness. I
And you know, in LA, it's not a given, but for the most part, nobody here cares where you're from.
yeah,
They just don't give a damn. We have people here from every square inch on Earth. As I've always said, if there is a country somewhere on this planet that has not sent someone to LA, let's get this done today. Get them on a plane, get them down at LAX, get them a motel in Santa Monica. They don't have to stay, but come on, give it 2 weeks. Walk around, get a T-shirt, look at the beach, look at the girls, look at Hollywood. Then you can go home if you want. But if you don't, you can stay here because we don't ask you where you're from.
right. No, nobody looks at you in L.A. and says, "You're not from here."
You're not from.
Nobody looks at you in New York and says, "You ain't from here, are you?"
They haven't got time. In fact, when they would see my California driver's license, the guy at the local 502 Musicians Union in New York said, "What the hell are you doing here? What are you doing here?"
You live out in paradise.
I didn't have an answer for him.
If you're not doing anything tomorrow morning at 8,
Join
besides
Vinnie.
sleeping, you tune into Drive Time. We're gonna have a cartoon. It's a brand new song, just out, hot off the presses.
Give me a hint.
Somebody you know. He's a multifaceted actor, musician, raconteur. Let's see. And he really has gone where no man has gone before.
William Shatner.
Bingo! William Shatner has a new record out, 92 years old. And one of the cuts on the record is called I Ride.
He's got a show on the History Channel called The Unexplained.
Yeah, yeah,
Have you ever seen it? It's worth your time and effort. Better than a lot of the other crap on there. When you've had all the news you can handle and you don't think Donald Trump's ever going to go to court, try the History Channel and the Unexplained.
yeah, yeah. And again, you know what? That's what we need. We need more diversions away from the Donald Trumps of the world. And maybe we'll stop, maybe some people will stop believing everything that they say.
Holy moly!
I
Holy
wouldn't
moly!
count on it, but I would count on it. So yeah, 8 o'clock tomorrow we'll have that, and we'll have the results of my EV immersion. I haven't been to a gas station in a month.
Oh, you're missing something. They're lovely. All the amenities, all the extras, all the service, all the wonderful price breaks and deals, and
Haven't no. Well, you know what, Mikey? They don't give out glasses anymore. When I went to when I used to go to when my dad had gas stations, they used to give away things like this.
yeah, I remember I got a set of Raiders glasses at Shell in
Yeah,
Kinfield.
a little radio, like I have a
At
link.
Minto Shell. We knew the whole Minto family. They all worked at the Shell station.
But now you don't get things like that.
You get nothing.
You get you don't
You
even
get
get somebody to come out and wipe your windows, clean your wipe your what is it? Wipe your windows, check the air, dollar gas.
Yeah.
All the
Too
brothers.
much monkey business. Chuck Berry. Too much monkey business, baby.
Oh man. So
Too much
yes,
monkey
tune in
business for me
tomorrow
to be
morning if you're
involved in.
around, and we'll be doing that, talking about all three cars that I drove over this EV immersion that I did over the last week.
Three cars, no waiting.
3 weeks really, and how good it feels not to be not to be freed from oil. To be, it's like you're free of oil. You know, I'll the trade off of having to plug your car in every night.
Oh,
That's what we'll ask. Is it worth?
oh, of course it's worth it. And I am amazed that our so-called friends in Saudi Arabia took this chance to stick it to us, because it's going to be one of the last. And who's going to stick it to you when it's your turn? It's going to be your pals in America. We don't forget, it's business,
We
not
do
pleasure.
forget, though, Mikey.
It's business, not pleasure.
We do
So
forget. Unfortunately, we do forget. That's part of the American makeup, is that we do forget. If we didn't forget, there'd be no Japanese cars on the road. There'd be no German cars on the road.
there'd be no San Francisco Giants fans if people couldn't forget.
Right. If people couldn't forget, if people didn't forget, um, there, it'd be a very different country.
You mean it'd
One of
be like history not repeating instead of
yeah,
repeating and repeating and
one of the
repeating.
hallmarks of being an American is that you forgive people, right? Is that we, at least before the Me Too thing came along.
Yeah, that's a debatable point. We'll have to wait and see how that rolls out. I'm not certain about that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's. Yeah. We used to forgive people. We forgave the Germans. We forgave the Japanese. We forgave the Koreans. Although now we're getting a little ugly with them.
No, we forgave the Southern Koreans. We didn't forgive the Northern Koreans.
But we never
And
stopped fighting them. We're still technically at war with them, right?
we're at war. It's gonna be a great, glorious war, as they all are.
Yeah, I think we're sitting. I think I'm sitting right under the flight path of mentally ill's rockets.
Remember those bombs that Putin is talking about are low yield. Yes, they're atomic bombs. Yes, it's horrible. Yeah, there's a hydrogen explosion that goes on, but they're low yield, which means one of them just barely gets Cincinnati, and you can debate whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or
Well,
not.
yeah, you know what? I'm going to tell you, Michael. Cities that I
That's why
know that
that's why I purposely use Cincinnati as an
if you
example.
want to aim toward that particular city, no big loss.
Don't hurt anybody in Kentucky. Make
I
sure
almost,
that
it's really bad because we can't goof on Florida anymore. We have to hold our tongues.
till they rebuild.
Yeah, so hurry up and send money so they can rebuild, so we can joke about them again. All right.
Hey,
I
Vinny,
will.
Vinny, for your birthday, a belated gift, I'm sending you Ron DeSantis white wading boots. They're beautiful. They've never been
Oh,
used,
I saw
and
those.
you're gonna love them. You're gonna love them when you're out there in the backyard getting the dog poop.
And as a closing thing, I will just say, Michael, if the people in the Biden campaign have any brains whatsoever, they will start printing up T-shirts today that say his 2024 campaign slogan: "Don't fuck with a Biden."
Unless it's Hunter Biden, you can fuck with him all day long.
Yeah, yeah, mess with him all you want, but yeah.
All right, Vinny, I'll see you
What's
Monday
the thing?
for a morose, malevolent Monday.
Yes, I'll see you on Monday if the Lord's willing and the creek don't rise. Thank you all so much for listening. We always appreciate it. Let's go, Mariners.
And
How
if
do
you
I?
don't know what
I
mellifluent
almost
means,
got it.
go find out. Yeah, you almost got. And go Mets. Let's go Mets. LGM.
There you go. Hashtag LGFM. Um, it's New York. What are you gonna do?
You can't take the New York out of the New Yorker. You cannot.
And we will see you. And we'll see you on Monday. Thanks so much for listening, as I said. And remember, always look at each other with peace, love, Manischewitz.
Bring your own wine. What a wine.
What a wine. See you, Mikey.